Well, here we are with video number 3 for the day. And what I've been smoking in all these videos is my my Peterson Killarney Red. And in it, I'm smoking some Elizabethan mixture, which is a lovely, what I really like about this one is the tin note on it, or the jar note now, because it's all jarred up. It's kind of fruity. It's like a fruity sweet kind of a thing, and which is a little, honestly, for me, it's a little bit off-putting. I don't mind it like in the Three Nuns and the Revelation match because I'm expecting it. But the nice thing is that when I light this up, there's much more of a depth there. It's not just some kind of like flitty, fruity, cotton candy kind of a tartness. But anyway, today's going to be one of those live chat videos, so no introductory slide or title thing. But I figured we'd take a break from our more heavy series that I've been doing on consciousness and answer a video request from Cliff that's a bit more fun. So we'll take a break from the deep intellectual conundrums. But Pipe Ninja was asking about these. The Nunchaku, or a lot of people refer to them as nunchucks. He made a comment noting, when I was wielding my Zippo, that looked like I knew how to use these. And in point of fact, I do. Martial arts is one of the things that I like to talk about on this channel, although I don't talk about it very often. But the Nunchaku, the history of them is a bit fictionalized in most cases, because oftentimes the people doing the instructing are not historians. They're just telling what's been told before, and it's not, strictly speaking, fully accurate. And I can say this because when I first began studying martial arts, goodness, over 30 years ago, I started, as most people do, in the Okinawan martial arts. Typically, people begin studying martial arts to either Okinawan or Korean. So you go with one of the Okinawan systems like Shorin-ryu, Shurite, Shuri-goju, Okinawan Goju, one of those, or you go with a Korean system like Taekwondo or Hapkido, because those are the most popularized, especially in the Midwest. In the West Coast, you see a pretty heavy presence of Kempo, and certainly in Hawaii, American Kempo. Of course, recently in the last 15 years or so, it's been like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu everywhere. But anyway. And the story that's told, and I say I'm guilty of doing this myself. I started teaching when I turned 18. I was a brown belt in the first system I ever studied in 1993, I think. And so as a brown belt, they're expected to start teaching like beginner classes, as one of the requirements to black. And because I was also working on my Kabuto certification, this is weapons, another black belt in weapons, I taught the Okinawan weapon set, which is Tonfa, Nunchaku, the bow staff, the Eku, which is kind of like an oar looking thing, kamas, and the sai. And the story goes that all these weapons were farm implements because Japanese occupation of the Okinawan Islands, the samurai came in, they were looting and pillaging, so the villagers had to figure out a way to defend themselves, so they adapted their martial arts study to their farm implements. And then they went underground studying their martial arts, and that's why we have katas, because they disguised their martial arts practices as dances, so they could practice them without the persecution of the samurai. That's not correct. That's a story that you're told. That's a story that you learn in class. But again, it's not meant to be strictly a history class. It's a martial arts class, and just the history kind of gets added in there. But it's not correct, because the only people who studied martial arts were the people who could afford to do so. Farmers were too busy farming, right? I mean, it's not like you're gonna spend 12 hours a day, tending your fields and flocks and herds and so forth, and then go home and spend 5-6 hours running, Nekabuto or Pinan or Nandancho or whatever, you know, and then sparring with your neighbors. It just didn't happen, right? I mean, farmers, if they got attacked by samurai, would die. That's the long and the short of it. However, the more elite classes in Okinawa did study these martial arts, and they did practice these martial arts, and the weapons that they used, some of them were originally farm implements. They were common items that they could just have around. They could adapt to weapons. Not necessarily so that the farmers themselves could be armed, but so that they could make use of common items. And the nunchaku, there's several different stories about what this weapon was originally as a farm implement. One is that it was like a horse bridle, like this. And the great weaponsmith Gordon Garland, who's gone home to be with the Lord several years from now, has a wonderful set that he made out of it looked like a horse bridle, because this is essentially it's a flail. It's a common weapon in a lot of areas, and there were actually the horses that the samurai rode. Their saddles could be broken down into different parts, and one of them was the horse bridle, which looks somewhat like this, like the one Gordon Garland had made. And they were used for that one. This one here, this flailing thing here, was more likely used as some kind of gathering instrument for grain and so on and so forth, right? But again, the flail, just like the sai is a trident. It's a three-pronged weapon, commonly used in a lot of different areas. It's kind of like math, right? I mean, everyone figures out math eventually, no matter what culture you're from. And it's a similar thing with weapons, right? I mean, it's not like, one guy invented a sword, in Eastern Europe, and then it spread around the world, right? Different people from different areas had different ideas, but they're based in common understanding. And that's essentially what this is. So it's really a flail. And I will do a video, or I'll do an insert on a demonstration of how to use this. I'm going to do it in my garage, because I don't want to be outside my full gi wielding nunchaku, because I'll have people asking me for free lessons. So let me take a break here, and I'll do that demo. Well, as you can see, a lot of those movements are things you've probably seen in movies. For the most part, those movements are not combative movements. They are combative movements, I shouldn't say that, but not in the series in which you see them. A lot of the crossing and so forth, and certainly the one where I open my hand up and flip it from one hand to the other. You would never do that in combat. You would never open your hand on a weapon. But in actual use, it's used like a flail. I mean, it's a quick whack, and then a recovery, and then a whack. You don't spin it around in front of yourself, because then you telegraph the use of your weapon. What we do that for, and the reason we have that, is for two reasons. One, because this is a training weapon. A lot of people think that you need to study years, with other different weapons and work your way up to nunchaku. And certainly in a lot of the storefront schools, they'll always start people with the bow staff, because they start with kids. And kids can whack themselves with this and they get sued. So typically, I did it for years too. We would start everyone on the bow staff, because that's the one you're least likely to injure yourself with. But in truth, when I began with my teaching just a small group of adults later on in my martial arts career, I stopped teaching kids classes and was like, no, I'll pick 4 or 5 adults, and I'll transfer some information to them, but that's it. began with the more traditional methods of weapons instruction, which is to use this as a training weapon because it develops your hand-eye coordination. It develops karate, which is body conditioning because you hit yourself with it. And it gives you a presence of mind about the weapon, where it's at, how to grip it, and where your movements are like, and the flow of your movements. So those skill sets are easily transferable to other weapons like tonfa and sai, and so on and so forth. So in actual combat, I mean, it's a whack here, it's a whack there. It's holding the weapon back, and doing traps, and then and using it in this manner like a club. But you're not going to do like the Bruce Lee thing and like whip it around yourself, for 5 minutes before the fight starts, because you're going to give away too many clues. So traditionally used, this weapon is really the least exciting, even though the prep work for it looks completely awesome. It's really rather impractical, that prep work is, and the practical uses of it are kind of boring. But that's it. So there we have the brief history, such as it is, along with some of the usage. So I hope you enjoyed that. And, we'll get back to our video on consciousness because I still have to cover non-reductive supervenient physicalism. And then we'll get to our video on heaven. Any other further martial arts questions you have, by all means, pop those in the comments too. Be happy to show you. Have a great week. As always, happy reading.